Mr. Lott has already made, get to where we all agree on the verbiage, whether it's new verbiage or something that you may have thought of that you want to share. And then we need to, of course, be ready in an hour, because whatever happens here on the Student Code of Conduct goes back on the agenda, and it has to be voted in, and then it goes directly to Ms. Sherry so she can get it to the printers, because it's our responsibility to have this ready for our students the first day of school. It needs to be in their hand. And I just thought it, from the last meeting, I pulled it because I thought it was beneficial if we discuss some things openly as a board. So with that said, Mr. Lott, do you want to add anything about the changes so far?
Well, you said that these were my changes. They're not my changes. All these little blue slips that I have in last year's all come from schools and the people that are boots on the ground that are doing investigations every day. And they see some issues. For example, there's one that we added on face paint en masse. Well, that came from my good friend, Mr. McCullen here, who last Halloween had a problem at Chiefland Little High School with some students who were painting their faces and they were becoming a distraction. And so we added that language. So just to give you some idea of why the changes occur. Sometimes there's changes in statute and we have to change the language in here to reflect that, but yeah, it's not something that I do per se. All of these things come from suggestions from the schools and the school administrators.
I apologize. I just know that you get the task of doing it,
Yeah.
so that's why your name came out, so. Thank you.
So anything in red are changes.
So, yeah, I'm not sure where to start, because there's a lot. I didn't know if we were going to do a presentation or go over the things, but
Line
does
by line on
anybody
all
think?
I think about maybe just go line by line,
Yeah.
because it's, I mean, it's not red on every page.
Yeah.
Like that.
Let's do
Maybe.
that.
Yeah.
So start at the beginning then?
Yeah.
Start at the beginning.
I think 17 was the first one I saw that had red, but we
Yes,
did-
page
Page
17.
17 is the first red.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through the changes and tell you why the changes are there?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an hour. So I think.
Well, obviously, the first page, we got some changes. Mr. McCullen's on, Ms. Boyle is on,
Oh, wait.
and the years have changed. And I'm scrolling through this, I apologize, but I don't know what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
this.
17, I think page 17 is what we figured was the first John.
Or if you just want to hit the majors, certain
Yeah.
things is,
Right.
like the face paint thing, I kind of assumed that was already
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
common knowledge. It's almost like we're writing down things that most folks already know, you know.
In some cases, that's true. Okay.
So are we starting on page 17
So
for the
17,
first change?
basically with the extracurricular activities, there is a chance that in the future, certain kids that are receiving these scholarships, in particular PEP, right? Mr. Bennett is more familiar with this than I am. Those students that are taking the scholarship money from the state, they put this money into a bank account, for a lack of a better word. And that money then is used to pay out, for example, if they go to a private school. That money is then accessible by the school directly without going through the parent. And so recent changes in policy in Tallahassee in regard to this will allow us, and other school districts are already doing this, it will allow us, for example, let's say a kid who is receiving this scholarship goes and takes an ag class with us. We do have had kids in the past who have done that. They want to be in the FFA, they want to take an ag class with us. If they're taking a class with us, we may be able to, in the future, basically charge them an X amount of dollars for using our teachers, our facility, and all that. We also may be able to do that with extracurricular activities. You know, a kid who is on a scholarship, who is playing football, let's just say for Williston High School, you know, we are paying the bill. We are paying for the lights, we are paying for the officials, we are paying for the equipment, we are footing the bill totally. And we only think it's fair that if we are able to recoup some of that money that we are spending for a kid that we're not receiving any FTE for, many times, that we should be able to do that. And so, the reason that's there is because, and I put may because, not every kid who is homeschooled has that scholarship. And so we don't have that fund available to drag that money out of. Does that make sense? And if you have any other questions on that, in regard to that, Mr. Bennett is much better versed at that than I.
I'm all for that because I know a lot, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the homeschool kids now are getting the Step Up scholarship also, so they have a bucket of money. So why not take some of the state money for public schools too?
Right.
Step Up for Students is the scholarship funding organization. It's basically the umbrella for a variety of different state scholarship programs, each
Right.
of which has their own rules. So you can work through Step Up for Students to get a family empowerment scholarship,
Right.
EP scholarship, and so each one of those has different rules. And so this is just, like you said, proactive, to try to put some language in there to enable us to keep moving forward with
Yeah, I think
scholarship
that's
service.
Too.
I don't have a problem with hitting them with a bill if they don't have a
Yeah.
scholarship.
Right, that, I was.
It
just
still
gonna
costs
mention
money.
that,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the
Is
benefit
it
of public
possible to
school.
do that?
You know,
That's right.
that's-
You don't
Everybody.
have to, regardless of whether they have the
There's
scholarship.
some statutory references that require us to offer some things, so it's kind of, you have to be careful. about
Does the
it.
statute require us to offer participation in scholastic
Yeah,
as
that's
well
the
as
Tim Tebow rule. and
athletic? Okay.
I think,
So basically, we're gonna try to get as much money as we can,
Yeah.
because hey, we're poor, so we're gonna
Yeah.
try
Right, there you go.
Right.
we can. Assure you, we will, but there may be some instances where we can't. But it's sort of on my, my list, you know what I mean? Things that I do, not agree with, and that's one of the things I do not agree with, that we have to offer all these services to kids that we receive
Mhm.
absolutely no FTE. Why should we have to test kids that we don't teach? You know, things like that,
I agree.
IEPs, by the boards.
Oh, yeah.
you know, all that stuff, you know, we don't receive any money, so why should we spend and use our resources? You know, it makes no sense.
I was a Tim Tebow fan, but
Yeah, me too.
if you want to play football at our schools, you go to school.
Yeah,
here.
100%.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Or if you want to be in our FFA chapter, be at our school.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I've thought too.
All right.
Sorry.
You're good.
No, is there any other questions on that? We good?
Good.
All right, 18 was the face mask. I probably should change that. I don't know, mask, face paint is not permitted, maybe they should be are not permitted, I don't know. Anyway, I had face paint, then I had to add mask, that's why, that's why that's that way.
Yes.
20,
I was gonna weigh in on
Oh,
that.
oh, yes, go ahead.
I think what would solve the problem is if you got rid of the slash and you just put or, like mask or face paint, and then you could change from is to are. I think it would just read, mask or face paint are not permitted. Would be my grammar suggestion, the notes that I have here. And then, not to bring up a sore subject, but, do we wanna say that this provision is not applicable to
Medical mask?
medical?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we need to delineate between a
Yeah.
Halloween mask and a,
Yeah.
Yes, probably so.
My thought was, I said medical mask versus a full face covering mask or something, I don't know.
My note says this provision does not apply to masks worn for medical purposes.
That
Yeah.
sounds
There you go.
good. That covers it.
So,
okay, we can add that. I mean, basically, the reason I put it, unless it's been approved by school administration as part of the school activity, I get it. It could be outside the school activity. But as Matt and I were discussing that, there could be times when you would allow face paint to be permitted, for example, during homecoming.
Homecoming.
Right.
Yeah.
So we wanna have some kind of fundraiser or something for that purpose, or, there are times when you may want to allow, that kind of activity.
I like the fact he leaves it open to the school administration to decide.
Right.
Well, I think, in general, this student code of conduct, having been in that seat and done it, we try to be as flexible as possible, because there's so many situations that occur on a daily basis. I mean, you can never have a rule that says if you do this, you will get this, because the situations are so varied. We try to do the best we can to paint in broad strokes, so to speak, so that we do give those administrators flexibility to investigate. And we feel like this is what happened, and then apply the punishment, depending on the situation. You got a kid that does something the first time, you get this punishment. You got a kid that does something the fourth time, you get this punishment. So not only does the situation vary, but the punishment is going to vary depending upon progressive discipline.
Right.
So anyway, have you got those changes?
It's mass or face paint, it's not permitted unless, and then what else are we gonna put on there?
Our counselors provided the Wikipedia definition.
Thank you.
Just a suggestion.
Page 20, this includes state testing, national testing, district and the course exams and industry certifications. The biggest reason for invalidations on any kind of testing nowadays is kids have their cell phones out. And so this originally came from Jennifer Bray at Bronson Middle High School, who I think had 5 tests invalidated one day, and she's not very happy. And she contacted me and said, hey, can we add some language in there? And it's actually in a couple of different places. And then as we were discussing this, Tanya Taylor said, hey, because originally we didn't have the industry certifications in there, so this thing is morphed a little bit to be, as comprehensive as possible. Basically, any of those tests not only is going to result in an invalidation, but some discipline as a result. Bottom of 20, there was perhaps some confusion. I added some language, so I said in most cases. So the first offense, second offense, third offense, future offenses, all of those things, to tell you how those originated, those came from the school. That's what the schools as a group decided, hey, this is for a common, I have my cell phone out during the day. I'm checking my email, whatever it may be, and I get caught with my phone. And so those list of things came from the school discipline officers and those at the school who were doing the discipline. It came out that perhaps it's confusing. Like, for example, if I'm using my phone and I'm looking at porn on my phone, should I get first offense, device confiscated and parent contacted and returned? No. Obviously, that's a more serious offense, and so therefore, we added some language that basically says, hey, if you're using it the first time, you get caught the first time, and it's a serious offense, it's going to move it directly to, level 2, level 3, or I didn't put level 2, but there is a level 2 phone offense in there as well. But it could move directly to a level 3, which obviously, if you look at level 3 consequences, could result in expulsion.
Mm-hmm.
So, wide range of penalties depending upon, what happened in the incident.
My one statement about that is a 3 or 4. Do we need to define who makes that decision? Because it says 3 or 4. Who makes the call whether to make it a 3 or 4?
All under the principal.
Hey, that's, yeah.
But it doesn't need to be put in there, it's kind of,
Okay.
they're the ones in
the head
charge.
decision maker at the school.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, since we're talking about this, Those okay, when it first got brought up about we wouldn't allow phones, I mean, it's on record. I wasn't necessarily for that. I see the benefit of it. But the very thing that worried me at that time still bothers me to this day. I have taken trips to various schools, and some are Gestapo, don't let me even see the outline of that thing in your back pocket. Other schools are, hey, you're doing your thing. I think
It needs to be consistent.
it needs to be across the board, whatever the rule is. I don't agree with like, I've known of several kids whose parents I've gotten a phone call. Hey, my kid had it in his back pocket. It wasn't out. He wasn't using it. He was walking to class. Teacher said, hey, where's your phone? Oh, it's in my back pocket. Oh, it's supposed to be in your backpack. We'll write you up. That's a little extreme. At the same time, why are we taking it from these kids when this one's over here in class and this teacher just looks the other way? Well, come to find out, the teacher's sitting there on her phone too. I mean, honestly, I mean, and I will go so far as I have received texts myself from my children when we were there, from other people's kids. Hey, Mr. Asbell, can you help us with this? It's got to be
Across the
the
board.
rule. The rule is the rule is the rule on this. And I think if the rule is the rule is the rule, it'll avoid some other problems that pop up with cell phones. I know they got to have it, and I'll say again, like I said then, it's a tool. Properly used, it may be one of the best tools you can have. I mean, let's face it, if we're out working on something, unlike Devin, who may be the smartest guy, no, he probably doesn't have to do this, but if you're working on something, you got to look it up. I'm going to Google that, how that works. That's using that tool properly. Same time, misusing that tool is looking at them things you ain't supposed to be looking at. So I don't know how we do it, but and it doesn't really fall into this, but I think we need to have another discussion at our schools of,
I do.
Hey,
I totally agree
this is
with
the
that.
cell phone rule.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta make it work. The other thing that bothered me, and we didn't talk about it just then, it's bothered me from day one, and I asked this then, and I still stand by this. If we confiscate that phone, yeah, that kid wasn't supposed to have it, but we confiscate it. This grown-up's got it, and they lock it up, put it wherever. All of a sudden, that phone goes missing. Who's responsible for said phone? At that point of replacing a brand-new iPhone that's called stuff goes missing at schools.
It says we're not
We would be
responsible. It says,
responsible.
It says we're not, but I mean, I don't know about you, but if Devin takes my phone and then Devin loses my phone, I'm mad at Devin. It wasn't Cameron didn't lose it.
yeah.
You know,
1,500.
especially in the case of, I reference back, had it in the back pocket, wasn't doing anything with it. Oh, so-and-so, Miss So-and-so took my phone in today, boom. Then I also go along with, like we see these expulsion hearings, we got one coming. They're constantly. We called mama, we called mama, we called mama. At some point, let's put some teeth on this bulldog if we're gonna have this bulldog. So those are my only comments on this, and I'm gonna let it go.
I think it's our responsibility to see that the policies we have are enforced and are followed, or else, because we're the ones that are ultimately responsible for that. And that I go back to, and I know that, administrators need to have some leeway, but I do think our policy and our code of conduct needs to be explicit, because it does cause problems. Different, just like you said, different schools administrators are either following the policy, not relaxing it, making exceptions. Policy is to be followed, and our expectation should be that the administrators follow the policy.
This is what I have found in my, and y'all heard me mention this before. I don't have a problem with, we vote a policy in, and somebody can go, yep, that's the policy, the school board said that policy. But whenever it's something dirty, or something that they don't, and I'm gonna say it, the schools don't want to be, oh, well, this is our decision, and I don't wanna be the bad guy. Too many times I've heard, that's a school board decision.
Yes, me too.
I don't know nothing about it, and I'm one of the 5. No, we don't care. I'm not saying we don't care, but we don't care. No, Sally, you can't wear yellow socks today. School board said you can. No, we didn't. You just don't like yellow socks. If you're gonna, anyway, I agree with you. If we're gonna have this policy, we stand by this policy. If the school is going to be the basis of, yes, this flies, this doesn't. Be the one that says, nope, that don't fly. I believe responsibility rests with whoever's the responsible party. And too many times I hear that, well, you know, school board said we can't do it. No, we didn't. You know, sometimes it's a state thing. Sometimes it's somebody at school just don't want to do that.
It's easier.
So, anyway, got off on a tangent. I'm sorry, we have limited time. I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a
Yes.
comment. I did check with the administrators at my two schools to ask them if they had any input on this issue. And they said they liked the way that Mr. Lott currently had it written, that they agreed with that and had no issues with it. They did feel like that they need to make changes on how they train their staff. That is a lot of the problem. If the staff, you know, if they don't know explicitly what it says, then they're not going to enforce it. So that was one of the things they said that they wanted to do, was change how they train staff. Also, inform their families at the beginning of the school year what it says, and want to be more in alignment with the policies. They felt like that probably at the elementary school, their biggest issue is going to be buses. If the bus drivers, so that's another thing we need to think about. Are they going to be allowed to have, I mean, what is it on the buses? It's the same policy, right? Okay.
Well, no, it's up to the bus driver.
Okay.
That's after school hours, and so at
Gotcha.
that point, basically, our policy says you're not allowed to use your phone from the beginning of school until the end of school.
Okay, so that's
The
not
bus
in,
drivers feel like it's a way to keep kids
Keep 'em
quiet
well, and that's,
occupied.
Yeah.
that's what they mentioned. They said it's difficult to monitor on a bus full of kids when the bus driver's concentrating on driving, and if they don't have an aide on the bus, then, so, okay. Well, that was all I had.
You know, I would say in my many years as a school administrator, back in my day, the hardest thing to basically enforce consistently was dress code, right?
Yes.
Bottom line is that many times it all came down to the teachers in the classroom, because that's the first line of defense. That's who spends the most time with the kids, and so trying to get a staff that's consistent on enforcing the rules, whatever the rule may be. It may be dress code, and, you know, the one that always was the length of the shorts, you know, back in the day. But now this thing has morphed into many other things. Today, the hottest topic really is phones. And so, I guess the question for you, so that we can relay this to the administrators, so a kid has his phone out 5 times. Where would you expect that kid to fall on a matrix? Is that a kid we bring before the board for expulsion? Is that a kid that we suspend for 10 days? Because we've already disciplined this kid 4 times for having their phone out. We're on the 5th time. We told you, we punished you. It's not doing any good. You're now at the point where you're at 15 days in a semester for OSS. By board rule, that brings in 5.11. They'll be before you. Are you prepared for 50 expulsions in a semester? That's my prediction. We got a little run to bet on that if we are hard line on that. But I expect probably 50 expulsions per semester. If we say you have a phone out, you're going to get written up, and it's going to get a punishment. We will convey whatever your wishes are to the administrators. At that point, it's up to them to train their teachers and say, you see it during school hours, it's a referral automatically, no exceptions, send them to the office.
I think it's an impossible thing. I'm being serious. When we open this can of worms, and it's a can of worms that had to be opened, but it is an impossible, it's, you know, it's like the toothpaste, you can't put it back.
Yeah.
So it's, what do we do with it? I don't know. I think inevitably there comes a point, yeah, you gotta show up. Not cause the kid, okay, and this is just me as a parent. If my kid has been 5 referrals on that cell phone, guess what now I possess? I'm gonna have his cell phone. Sometimes those expulsion hearings are mama and daddy need expulsion, not the kid. Okay?
That's right.
Because, you know, you look at it and you go,
Almost every time.
and this is a horrible way to put it, but you sit there and go, why the hell you still got a phone? You know, because you don't need to talk to me from 8 to 3 o'clock. There's plenty of adults and plenty of telephones. And I'm a guy that's absolutely addicted to a cell phone. And again, I was one that harped on we don't need to do it. So I do think we would wind up with a lot of expulsions, but we might need to wind up with a lot of expulsions to prove the point for multiple reasons. We get here and you'll have a kid got 50 referrals and 30 of them have to do with the cell phone. Well, you're obviously, and people don't want to hear this, but it's true. Somebody in the line is too ignorant to understand this is what's happening. Somebody keeps touching the stove, and because it don't burn them, I can touch that thing all day long. So I don't know that magic answer.
What's the perception in the school when you do take a cell phone from kids, Matt, from just coming out of principal? I mean, is there very much, I mean, we all, obviously, when we have expulsions, we see the one that's just constant. But do some of them take it serious when there's once or twice? What's your experience?
Well, I think there's a lot of research out on cell phone use in teens in particular, and their use of a cell phone is a dopamine release, and so they get so much pleasure out of using a phone that it's really an addiction.
Yeah.
You know, it's like drugs or something. It's really an addiction for some of these kids. I've seen myself. So we don't really care.
Yeah, I was just curious where.
Policy, so where do you want us to say, hey, you know, and I would say the state statute has gotten more restrictive. The counselor may want to speak about that. I mean, I looked at ours, and for the most part, you know, everything we had in there falls in line with the state statute, because we basically had already said you can't use your phone during school hours, you know, but.
I voted for the restriction on cell phone, and I stand by that. I feel like kids are talking more, they're learning more, all of that. That being said, I do agree, it's been, as we expected, crazy to monitor all of that. I feel like it's the perfect time right now with the change of administration to sit the faculty down and say, these are our expectations. I think about the kids and the repercussions on the kids as far as kids are dumb and just they don't think, not dumb, but they don't think, and they're taking pictures of their head and the fan. I have teenage boys, I've been through that. I think it's very important that we put it out on social media for the parents. We have an assembly for the kids, that if you take a picture, if you send a text, it could end up in a level 3, it could end up in a level 4. If you're college bound, that will derail you. And even then, it doesn't register to kids. But I just think about them with a level 3 or a level 4. Like, I just feel like communication's so important, and our expectations with the staff, repercussions on the staff if they don't enforce it. I mean, I'm all about going hard on it. And if we have to deal with expulsions, then we have to deal with expulsions.
Well, it
But
goes beyond the school board. I mean, it's a House bill, right?
yeah,
The state of Florida says that you will not have wireless communication
Right.
devices. So it's not really, I mean, it's
Right.
from Tallahassee. I think there's a lot of, as far as communication piece, that's the key of, you know, whether, as I would assume most principals at the beginning of the school year, you go through all the rules with all the kids, and you're going through all these things. You're showing examples and non-examples of what you can and can't do. For my staff in particular, I did not want a teacher taking a kid's cell phone, because that's when they're gonna go nuts, and you're gonna have a whole different problem versus just a simple cell phone referral. So they would write the student up, and then the dean would take the phone. And then Mr. Aswell, that kind of solved that problem of, you know, all these different folks having phones and losing them and things like that, because I always felt like I would be responsible for taking that phone if they got lost on my campus, so.
How effective do you see that once someone's phone is taken, a second offense or third offense? I mean, we talked about, you know, we don't have so many and they'll be in front of here, but I mean, how effective did you see once someone's phone was actually confiscated?
Go back to what Mr. Aswell said, it's as effective as the parent and how important they think it is. I mean, to be honest with you, most of the time, the kids, the smart ones, they're gonna go to the bathroom and use their phones. They don't use them in the classroom. But it's, most of the time it will work, but like, if you don't have that parent support, it doesn't matter.
Which
I
we
think-
don't.
I think actually cheaper
That's
than
why you
that
need the
one
policy
Right.
year
too.
last year,
Yeah.
cell phones.
Well, don't
Right.
we have Miss Graham that's gonna be doing the social media, don't we?
There's Chelsea.
Chelsea?
Yes, she's gonna be the piano.
Okay, maybe that's something that she could,
I agree that the onus is going, right now, is going to switch to myself in this role. And prior to school starting, when you sit down with admin and teachers, is putting that information out there,
Right.
just like you said.
yeah.
I don't know, I agree with all the expulsions that would come before us. I looked through a meta search in board docs, all cell phone policies at different areas, even different states. And I didn't see this, I don't know legally if we could do it, but then again, it's going to be harder on admin. But before the expulsion, if there was future offenses, maybe after the 5th offense, like you said, student is mandated, not mandated, but student has to leave that cell phone home for such amount of days. And I don't know how you,
Can't do
you
that.
can't do it.
No,
Yeah,
they
you
can-
can't
they can-
refuse them to have the phone.
We have done contracts with the parents and the student where they drop it off with administration in the mornings. So we have done that.
That's a good idea.
That's a solid idea.
It's,
Yeah.
Did that work?
I didn't see that in anything I looked, but
But that's voluntary, even that's against statute. Even that's against statute.
is it?
Yes.
You gotta get parent permission to.
Yeah, I had, I used to do that at Williston High School until I got a police officer at my door and said, you have a complaint, a sworn complaint filed against you because you're depriving somebody of their property. I said, what are you talking about? Well, it was the parent who owned the phone and who I took from the student. I had it in my drawer and I had to turn it over to the police officer so they could take it back to the parent.
So what if, and this is, because I just don't know any better, because I'm ignorant myself. So say you get to the 5, and we say, all right, you come to
Well, I just
expulsion.
threw 5 out.
I'm just arbitrary number, I'm gonna use your 5. The 5, on number 6, you're coming here for an expulsion hearing. At that expulsion hearing, hey, we'll let you go back to school, on the condition that you have contract, you don't get, you and your parents sign this contract that you can't bring a phone there anymore. You can go to regular school. Not, you go into focus. Is that even feasible? Is that?
That's an idea.
It's feasible as long as both sides continue to agree.
Yeah.
Well, on the second that they don't agree, you go to focus.
Sure.
You
I mean-
face a 2-year expulsion. Or you just learn the strong way that, no,
What if they were using someone else's phone? Because I've done what you're
Yeah.
suggesting.
right?
And I can't have my phone because my parents took my phone, but hey, can I use your phone? I'm still doing the same thing I was before, but now I'm using my
Anytime
Well, now
using
you
a
just
cell
brought your buddy
phone,
down
that's
too.
counted
I mean,
against you.
something's gotta
Doesn't matter
happen.
whose cell phone it is.
That's what I'm saying, there's so many what ifs.
Yes,
But
yes,
even though
it's an
in
impossible
statute-
thing, but
Mr. Delaney?
Doesn't it have to be specifically, even though it's in the statute, you know, explaining all of that, doesn't it have to be explicitly put into the code though?
We are going to follow the law whether it's written in the code or not.
But I mean, for the administrators to know what they should be.
I think it would be, it's a good communication tool to administrators, to students, and to parents. So we can point to it and
Because just
say,
saying
"We told you."
refer to the policy or refer to the statute, how many
May not
How
be
many
enough.
administrators actually do take out the policy and look at it, or look at the statute when they don't? Let's be honest. And so I think it's very important that everything we expect our administrators to enforce be in the code.
It's the communication part
Right.
prior to the next
Right.
school year.
I just think about all the fights that we were seeing a couple of years ago, and we laid the hammer down after a couple of our teachers got hurt. I mean, we dealt with that. We dealt with the expulsions, and we expelled without services several times. And then what happened? Our fights did slow down. So we may have to go through a hard part of, you know, cause and effect and making examples, but that's just my
I'm
opinion.
not talking about those extreme examples, I'm talking about
Yeah,
the good kid
the everyday,
who doesn't do anything else, who's never disrespectful, good kid, straight A student, but they get caught 5 times with their phone.
but I feel like if the expectation, if we
Have to do the
communicate
same.
if they're the good kids, they're listening, and we say, the 5th time you're going to the school board of Levy County and sitting with your parents, and you will be, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
that's just, I don't know.
It's already written here though, future offenses, it says and/or alternative placement or expulsion.
Yeah, I know it's in there, I'm just saying, you
Yes.
know.
Once you draw a hard line.
We need to convey out to the
Yes.
I think
school
we got to try it.
administrators, the
Right.
board is serious about cell phones.
Right.
The state has changed the statute about
Right.
cell phones, basically to fall in line with what we already had. So
Right.
this is a serious thing. If they have the cell phones out, let's follow the policy. Let's offer some consequences, and guess what? If we get to the point where we come before the board is perfectly okay with bringing these kids before the board for expulsion.
And and again, maybe it's because it's my idea. I like the idea of the contract because you bring hey, you bring a good kid. The good kid didn't do anything else. The good kid usually the good kid got the parents that'll go, wait a minute, we didn't know it was this serious. Yeah, we'll enter this contract and put in there, you can't be using a cell phone at school. You know,
Right,
some
not
sort of,
just
not just yours, you
yours,
can't, don't touch one.
anybody's.
Or you going over here. Come up with something like that. And to that point, how many times have we sat here and the kid ain't done nothing, but he did that one big screw up? You know, we've had good kids show up, well, he was stoned at school, but he's a good kid.
And that could happen with a cell phone.
Yeah, that can happen.
Depending on the nature of the
Yes.
offense, it could be one time with a
One
cell
time.
phone and.
Yes, absolutely. Kids are gonna make mistakes.
Yeah. But you gotta learn from it. I'm for the hard line on,
Well-
and I think that will eliminate some of the other tributaries that come along with the
I
cell.
do
If
too.
we're gonna do it, do it.
They're
And
all
Tammy,
fake.
Yeah.
and Tammy, you were saying that, you know, it's kind of up to you to make sure the administrators understand what the policy says in the state statute. I think also at the beginning of the year, I know they call it different things at different schools, but when the parents come in to bring the kids and all of that, open house, thank you.
Open house.
And they cover Title I stuff at that time. Maybe that would be a time that parents could reiterate, or administrators could reiterate what the policy says.
Yes, ma'am.
And then if Chelsea takes care, we're covering all the bases, and then it's in the Code of Conduct book, which they sign the form saying they've seen.
And they know we've taken this
Do
step to.
they do that for high school too? Are they required to
Verbal.
sign?
Oh, yeah, everybody.
Yes.
Everybody sign.
Everybody
Everybody sign.
signs a student, can say parent, yes.
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna ask, and because I don't know the answer, and certainly I would think this would need to be part of the training for administrators. Before we get to 5 offenses, at what point is this a level 2 insubordination or level 3 open defiance? Because lots of times we see on these repeated behavioral violations that come before the board, maybe they're before the board for something else, but you see this same teacher, this is the 3rd time this week I've told them not to have their phone out. And they're written up for that. So at some point, this behavior, if it's repeated in the same class, in a short amount of time, it's probably also falling into those level 2 or level 3 categories.
I think definitely if I'm your teacher and now the 3rd time I've had to get onto you about this, you're defiant. You're that's what that is. So that, and then by the 5th one, hey,
So
I
they're,
agree, I used to do that with tardies. State statute says we can't suspend for tardies, but insubordination and open defiance, because you're
Yeah.
tardy for the 6th time this week, guess what? That falls into a different category.
Yeah,
I
that
can't
shifts.
suspend you for that.
that shifts. And if however we need to word that, I think at a certain point, you're right, it becomes, this is a new gig.
I think the structure is fine. I think that's gonna be a training piece to get all the
Agreed.
administrators on the same page.
Agreed.
What if a teacher tells your kid to use your phone for some purpose?
It does say that in here that
They're allowed to.
they're allowed
Yeah.
to, the teachers are allowed to allow the students to use their cell
For a
phone when it's
project or something.
during their class
Right.
period and if it's for instructional.
Well, I
purposes.
mean, that's kind of a gray area, honestly, for probably state statute, I think it says it in there, but where we ran into that was there's some cases of science classes, some math classes where they needed scientific calculators, for example, and we can't afford to have scientific calculators for every student in that class, and so, there are apps that they can get which basically provide the same thing, every kid had a phone, right? So that's why,
Yeah.
that was in there.
That makes sense.
Well, and again, it falls
That
back to
makes
that
sense.
teacher saying,
Yeah.
okay, you can use it for this purpose.
Right.
And like, well, I know that my son with his IEP, he was allowed to take pictures of the assignments
Right, the
because,
notes.
because he was terrible at writing and he didn't have very good memory at the time, and he'd take a picture. But that was authorized. It's
Right.
the sitting there,
Right, right.
Johnny, what you doing after school? Look at this cool picture.
Yeah.
So are we, just looking at the time, are you as a board good with the changes on this page right here?
Yes, I think I'm good with
Yeah,
I'm
it.
good with
It's the hold the line
Yeah.
Okay.
is what I think we got more into the bushes on, and it's my fault.
Okay, well, thank you for your feedback, and I will work on the verbiage and present it to you of who it goes to and when. Is that okay?
Okay, 23 is basically just repeating what we had already said about the cheating and basically cell phones used in cheating. And then 24, we wanted to put some stuff in there in particular to address artificial intelligence, AI, which we feel like very well could be a growing problem that we'll see. So we've been proactive in that regard, and we already have board policy in regard to artificial intelligence that came into effect in 2024. You probably don't remember that, but we did the NEFAC model policy on artificial intelligence. But we wanted to be sure that we tried to capture the best we can, because right at this point we really don't know what the future may hold, but we have something in there that gives us some ground to stand on if we run into some issues. And we also had some language there in regard to the responsible use policy. The board policy on artificial intelligence is referenced there, 4.6 or 4.261. 27 pepper spray. What we saw in one instance in one of our schools earlier is that we had a kid, a young lady who had one of those little pepper spray things on their keychain. It was not to be used as a weapon or anything like that, but according to state statutes, that pepper spray was considered a weapon by our SRO and the police. And so we want to just clarify for our purposes, it has to be at a certain level. Now that level is 0.18, which basically makes it military or police grade pepper spray. Now that doesn't mean that if I have pepper spray that's below that level and I spray it in someone's eye, that I'm not going to face discipline. It just means that we wanted to treat it more like what we treat a pocket knife in our schools. We have a lot of young men who have the small pocket knife. Well, as long as I don't threaten someone with it, I don't, brandish it and threaten someone or display it in a manner that is threatening, that we treat it as contraband instead of a weapon. Does that make sense? So if I'm a young lady, for example, and I have pepper spray on my keychain because I work in Gainesville after school and it's not very safe and my parents wanted me to have this, we don't want it out, we don't want it brandished, but we're not going to treat it as a weapon. You're not going to get charges, you're not going to get suspended, expelled, or whatever by us. We would treat it like a contraband situation. Does that make sense?
I like that. There was
I
a
do too,
child in
yeah.
Okeechobee. She was a dual enrollment student, great kid, no referrals, nothing, and had pepper spray on her keychain for her night class that she was going to, and ended up being expelled and couldn't walk at graduation. It was a big deal. So I like this wording.
Some of these kids that walk back and forth home and they're after practice.
Right.
It's
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Anyway, we didn't want to get a kid in a bad situation in regard to that. Sometimes there's contraband, sometimes there is a weapon, right?
Yeah.
28, unauthorized use of electronic recording devices. We just added some clarifying language there is prohibited. I thought it was self-explanatory, but we added some language there. And on 31, basically, it's the same thing with pepper spray, but this time it's in the weapons category. I mean, anything can be a weapon. I expelled a kid one time at Wilson for a chain. I a heavy chain around their neck. Well, they took it off and they were trying to hit somebody with it. In my opinion, that was a weapon at that point. 59, we added some stuff, and Ms. Taylor added some stuff there. We added Mr. McClellan at the bottom, replacing Mr. Darby Allen. And then on the back, this, I'll tell you that this back page is a work in progress with the directory. And we, as late as yesterday, we're still making changes to that. If by the time we send this to the printer, for example, under Williston Middle High School, there's a TBD. If that is changed, then we will make those corrections before we send it to the printer, if at all possible.
I think it looks good.
Where is the part about
And I think we've had a good
student ID
discussion about it.
cards?
I agree.
No, but one of our administrators brought it up to me.
Some of y'all just mean to these kids.
Mr. Lott, where, is there something addressed about student ID cards?
She's saying not change, but just what section's that under, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it said, we noticed language around student ID cards throughout the document that will need to be edited to match what the new processes will look like for next year. So I'm not sure what she means by that.
Is that a comment from an administrator?
Yes.
It's just that
I
reference.
don't know.
Okay, I don't know either. I looked when I got the email, but
So
I
how it references to the ID.
wasn't sure what.
Is it the Traversa cards, Mr. Bennett? You think that they're referencing?
I think it probably is. I just did a search of the whole document for race ID cards. I didn't get it.
Okay, that's what I was
I
going to do.
look and see if there's anything in there.
It's probably the other communication that went out.
The receipt acknowledgement, do we usually at the high school level, do they come back to us signed? I know that,
They do
you
at
know,
the
in my
elementary level.
experience at
They
the
bring the stuff
elementary, they
back.
do, but we have a hard time getting them back. I don't know how any more bite could be added to that, maybe a call home at the beginning of the year to say that this is coming home and that we expect it back, I don't know.
We have a very
But-
hard time getting anything back from the state.
Right, exactly,
I'll tell you.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
What I did with my teachers, and it's been many years since I've been principal at a school, but what we did instead of that, because we know we're not gonna get them back.
Right,
We gave this kid the student code of conduct, and we had a list, and we said, basically it says, I acknowledge that I have received the student code of conduct, and then I sign it. I get everybody in the class to sign it, and now I've got proof that I didn't
that you
receive
sent it home with them.
You know, but, yeah,
That's a
we
good
hardly
idea.
get anything back from secondary students.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't know.
The transition to parent, from Remind to Parent Square, has a lot more offerings, and one of them is, officially signing forms.
Oh,
That's
good.
nice.
Oh.
That's
So I think
perfect.
we could probably push out.
Oh, that would be
received
wonderful.
And,
Yes.
Yeah.
code of conduct.
That's
And it
great.
literally
That would
is
be
a
very
click,
good.
Yes.
Which means your signature, because you're in your Google account, and it can be the same for parents.
That's great. What is the name of the new program? It's not
Parent Square.
Parent Square.
I know years ago, we switched this signature page from, I authorize the use of my pictures, my kids' pictures, to the, I do not. If you don't want your, you know, it was
Then
more
that's
like,
right. You
if
only
you're the
have
one
the
with an
kids
issue,
that
make
don't.
sure to sign this. Other than that, we're going to accept that
Are okay with it.
you're okay with it. And I
Pass it.
think that's a smart move. You didn't send anything in, so you.
We have a notation on our Skyward system, you know, we have a little system there where, like, for example, if you're ESC, you have a number, one, you know, and so forth. You could have an allergy of some sort, medical reasons, so all, you know, if you're retained, but there's also one on there is for the opt-outs, so like.
For media release, and media release.
No, immediate
Yeah.
use.
So there's ways to get out. So, and with this new thing that Ms. Lewis brought up, I think that's great too.
Yeah.
And I like the idea, we gave these out, y'all signed these papers, you got it, them students.
Yeah, I don't, I'd added some language in there too, I think, I didn't have it on my sheet, but basically, I did get a parent complain about someone else's parent at a public performance had taken something and posted on Facebook, and their kid was they had an opt-out. This is another parent taking a picture of their kid at a public
At a
event,
public,
but somehow it's
right.
my fault that got on Facebook. So I put some language in there, basically saying, hey, listen, at a public performance, we're not responsible.
Yeah, if they
Yeah.
don't want their child photographed, they probably shouldn't be in a public performance. I
Exactly.
mean, that's common sense to me.
I don't have no say-so or what, that mama recording this one, and this mama don't like that one.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of it.
Yeah, right.
Just cause you and your people can't get along, that ain't got nothing to do with me.
Straight me.
I just wanted the world to know that my little baby could sing that song. See?
I need to ask Mr. David.
We need to talk.
No, just a quick question before we close out.
Big Dave, man.
I wanted to let y'all know something. The one student that is potentially coming back to Williston out of focus, Shockley. I think there's, both parents have attorneys.
We've just opened it for public comment
At the workshop.
at the workshop.
Before we close out.
I just want to, I'm having a hard time. I'm here as a parent, not as a teacher today, and I think that whatever is put into play in the policy needs to make sure that it's clear by both the schools and the district level. Because when you have a child that's involved in something and it's brought forth, and you're told there was no intent, therefore there's no punishment, even though it is directly stated in this book that there should be some kind of punishment, that is wrong. So I think all administrators need to know that it's in this handbook. It's explicit in this handbook. But it needs to be followed. And, oh, well, that was just a first offense that they had their cell phone out, and then this translates after it, and because of it, that, to me, the phone out was the first offense. But what they did with the phone after that is not considered a first offense to me, in my eyes, when it involves my child, or as a teacher, any other child that I'm responsible for. So I think it needs to be clear that regardless of what the intent was, and I know most of you don't know what I'm talking about, is it still recording?
They do.
It's recording.
You do know.
They do.
I just feel like
Yes,
it
ma'am.
needs to be at the school level and the district level. If we come to the district office and we're told, well, there's no policy on that, and there is, it's in the student code of conduct, then everybody needs to know what that is and where it should fall.
I agree with that. Absolutely. I think that falls more in line with what we were talking about. Let's do what it says. Hold the line.
There's no point in having a policy meeting if policies are not going to be followed.
I agree with that.
And when you make an example out of someone, whether good or bad, that's now the precedent that you have set. So when something to the point that happened to my child happens, and then the precedent was, it's a first offense, cell phone violation, here's a verbal warning, that's the precedent you've just now set. When these are state mandated standards that we are now responsible as teachers to teach our kids, and it's the first offense cell phone violation, and nothing is done. We missed, as a school, a key thing that we were supposed to be teaching our kids, and it was just quiet and let go, and I think that's sad.
Well, Marisa, I personally want to apologize to you for that happening. you know, as a school board member who has the responsibility of enforcing policy. But we do take it very seriously, and I'm very happy with the discussion we had today. And we are very aware that our administrators and our students need to understand the policy and that we need to enforce it. And, you know, we're about not just protecting maybe a student who has been offended, but also the student who is using
Perpetrator.
the phone inappropriately too. That's our responsibility too. So, and we do take it very seriously. But thank you for coming and expressing your thoughts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum.
Anything else? Meeting adjourned.
Linda, that was a